The midway was like that.
Sure, well, the overnight is very. What does your watch say? Synchronizer watch. It's not right, is it?
Yeah. Make it faster.
I got it.
Looks at that. Somebody say. Wow.
We did everything like that. We went and rode rides. We rode.
I'm ready.
That's.
We're gonna get started, and you know, Brett is writing music a lot, and I don't know if you're on his list of, you know, he sends them out. What do you think of this? Maybe listen. I got one this week. That is not the normal thing we sing in church. And so I just asked Brett if he will get us going this morning with his piece. On the side a little bit. It's a quote from William Sloane Coffin. Some of you can tell me more about him than I can tell you. Anyway, I came across it. This would be it's an important idea for us to think about. The quote is basically, if you lessen your anger at the structures of power, you lower your love for the victims of power. Thing like that. So it's this part twice and part twice. If you lessen your anger. If you lessen your anger. Anger at the structures of power. Anger at the structures of power. Then you lower your love. For the victims of that power, you lower your love. If you lessen your anger. If you lessen your anger. Anger at the structures of power. Anger at the structures of power. Then you lower your love. For the victims of that power, you lower your love. If you lessen your anger. If you lessen your anger. Anger at the structures of power. Anger at the structures of power. Then you lower your love. For the victims of that power, you lower your love. Yeah, I got that song in my email this week, and I was just so touched. I'm just so touched by the theme of the song, because I feel like we don't sing this in church, and yet it is a theme that runs through the scriptures, particularly the prophets, and I mean, you could sing this song at the event where Jesus is overthrowing the tables at the temple. You can sing this song there. So today, thanks for showing up for another Sunday.
No,
But I know
put down.
we're working on something here that's
And somebody gave her a car.
all encouraged me this fall. Encouraged me to, do a little better job with definitions. Of some things, so I thought it might be good to start with, what am I meaning when I say, when I use certain words? So, for basics, and we're gonna talk a little bit about this one, but for basics, organizing, many people use this word for many things. I think since at least 2008, it's been a lot of people call themselves organizers. We had one in the White House, and so, but people mean different things by it. When I'm using the word, all I mean is, in this case, all I mean is, we're gathering together others who are like-minded, or in organizing, we might say share a self-interest. We're gathering and we're moving something, right? So, what are we moving these days, or trying to move in Isaiah?
Legislature.
The legislature, but I mean specifically what?
Well, issues like, energy and the climate transition and stronger childcare, healthcare for all, public option. More youth programming.
Right. So these are things that are someplace, or maybe even in the case of like a public option, maybe even non-existent at this point. And we're trying to move it to being a thing. So that's all I mean. And to do that, in the work of organizing, we find the people who are sharing the same concern, or maybe they could. So that's what I mean by organizing. So, we're gonna come back to this one today. The self-interest, we touched on last week is just a little bit about, is that annoying how that rattles like that?
I didn't hear it.
Okay,
Just you.
okay. Who are you? Self-interest, we're gonna talk more about this in a minute, so I'm gonna move on. Who are you? And who are we? And then, this is one I'll talk about. Because we have a little bit better definition of origin stories. And last week I was talking specifically about origin stories, and I realized I should have been calling them meta origin stories. So, meaning we have all kinds of stories about where things started. We could tell a story about where this church started. We could tell the story about how we do this all the time, about how you first came to our saviors. We could tell a story about, you know, if you have a spouse where you met that person. These are stories. But the meta stories that we started talking about last week are, what is the story underneath the story? So I use Dr. King as an example. How does Dr. King play the notes that resonate in the places in you that maybe you don't think about every day, and yet when someone says it, they resonate? Let freedom ring. Why does that resonate? You know, it probably wouldn't resonate to a German. It's not their story. But when we sing, when Dr. King says, let free, when thunder, doesn't say it, thunders. When he thunders, let freedom ring. We're hearing, probably Amos. But we're also hearing, our own national story. We even have a bell in Philadelphia. That's named like this. So it's plucking a string inside of me and inside of you probably, that is, it would not ring and it would not sound in their ear the same way to people from other parts of the world. Because it's a part of our origin story. Does that make sense? How is that for a definition? Okay, thanks. And you remember that the origin stories, the meta origin stories I was suggesting last time, that many of us have in common. This might be changing, but that many of us have in common. On the biblical side, our creation, we can name that second one something different. Historically, we call it original sin, which we call it broken. We call it separation from God, but whatever we call it. Estrangement. This is part of our, Abrahamic, covenant. And that includes, law. Biblical law. And how we think of that, and in liberation and Exodus. And you might remember that we talked about those weaving through, they're not necessarily chronological, even though. Actually, I wrote them up there in the way that they might appear chronologically in scripture, but. They're not necessarily chronological in the sense that all four of those themes run through all of scripture, including the New Testament. And then nationally, see how I didn't write that up there? We suggested maybe exceptionalism. I'm still kind of working in my mind with that one. Because I think it's true, but I just don't know if it belongs on a list of the four meta. Of the four, so discovery, original sins, usually in the context of this country, when we say it, what we're talking about is slavery and genocide. Constitutional law and freedom and liberation movements, which also did not start in the 1960s, but were there from actually the birth, I would think. Well, actually, one of the stories we tell about our country is it's a freedom and liberation movement from the British. It's one of the original stories that we tell. So those are the meta stories. So I think that what I'd like to talk about today is how these things get woven together. Maybe stick with biblical stuff today. How these things get woven together so that someone is moved from here, or some people are moved from here to here. Because this is what I've noticed about these meta origin stories. We can decide to use them for moving, or we can decide to argue about them. Well, this is the better one. This is the better one. This one is more appropriate now than this one. But the problem with that is it misses the point of who you might be talking to. So I think that there's a fundamental decision as organizers. That's what I'm talking about. I think there's a fundamental decision as organizers that we have to make, which is, do I want to be right? Or do I want to make progress with someone? Do I want to be right about it? If I want to be right about something, I might argue with you. I might argue with you that go with the right hand list here. The American stories of discovery. Probably we're talking about Christopher Columbus and others, because it's a theme that's woven through. Certainly stories of exceptionalism. These are the wrong stories. And what you should be focused on is stories of original sin, racism, genocide. That's the real foundation of America. Okay, that is an academic argument that we can have, and maybe we should have it. Maybe we should have it. But as organizers, we should step back a minute and say, do I want this person to join me in the fight for a public option on healthcare? Is that what I want? Or would I rather argue with them and be right about the origin story that they think is important versus the origin story that I think is important? Does that make sense?
Can I suggest just a tweak on that?
Sure.
It's a little less manipulative. Would I rather be right, or would I rather be in relationship?
Yes.
It would rather, instead of, well, I want to get this person to think, do what I want them to do, it's more like, well, where can we find common ground and move forward together?
Yes, I actually like this, but I actually like this amendment a lot. That's what this is about, is do I want to be right or do I want to be in a relationship, right? Yeah, I like that a lot. But also in relationship, the thing is, I probably want more than to be in a relationship. I want to find, I want to know you, and I want to like you. And if you just utterly disagree with me about, public option. I mean, I was in this conversation last week, not with an insignificant player, with John Marty, Senator Marty. He utterly disagrees. So I do want to be in a relationship with, I really don't think Senator Marty would mind me using this as an example. I do want to be in a relationship with Senator Marty. To be honest, when I talk to him, I have doubts about my own position. I actually think he's right about some things. I think he's right about the technicality. I think David's right about the politics. Yeah.
I just want to offer kind of a parallel lens, and I hope it doesn't like distract us, but if you look at the trajectory of those stories, I think it parallels human faith development, moral development, and also psychological individuation development. Okay, so when you're a child, your parents know everything, right? Because you're little and you're like experiencing the world, right? So then when, personally, I can be in the 1950s public school education, right? So when your teachers tell you, America's wonderful, we did all these wonderful things, and we did this, you know? Like, so then you get to kind of a more nuanced adolescent where you can know nothing, right? You're also rebelling against that story, which is like, okay, are you kidding me? Because like we oppress these people, and you know, we're not that great, right? But then in the next stage, I think, you know, if you have that sort of healthy development, you say, okay, well, let's go back to the exploration. We discovered some things that were new to us, right? And we are flawed people, right? And in our flawedness, we then made these discoveries, and then we realized that, you know, we had made these mistakes. So I'm just thinking like, when you talk to somebody who's stuck in that story, which is, okay, my interpretation, but you haven't gone through your adolescent rebellion and then reclaimed, you know, what was good in the beginning, to say, okay, so our parents and the government were right about these things and wrong with these things, and it's way more nuanced. And I feel like when you're arguing with people who are way on the other side of the spectrum, they're stuck, and they're like, and that's like non-presence, right? But it makes it so hard to get to that next stage, like where's the common ground, right? Because it's not black and white.
Right.
That's really helpful.
Well, one second. I just need 10 seconds to think.
Can I ask you?
Just one second. So I think that's right in terms of like, because we develop as a nation and we develop as a faith as we develop as individuals. And I do think, this is my best answer to this. I do think, that one path forward is, our evolution with these ideas. So, right, like, for example, discovery in talking about Americans. So one way to live into this part of our meta origin story is to think of discovery better than others, the shining city on the hill. This is, by the way, biblical language that Ronald Reagan used, shining city on a hill, to evoke a certain thing. I think what I'm trying to propose is, we're gonna have to figure out how to do what Reagan did, but for the angels.
But for the angels,
Meaning for the better angels, the better angels within us. Now I'm putting language. For the better angel, you know, to appeal to our better angels. It's because the alternative, this is what I'm trying to think, does this sound right to you? I think that. Because to only talk about, well, here's the way we progress. Here's the way, that is actually a really technical, nuanced, sophisticated way of saying you're wrong.
Well, it is an
I mean,
opinion
it's
we
not
take to a
wrong.
person,
Okay.
like, you're just not far enough along in your development. That's.
No, but I do think people hear that.
But if you understand it, you don't say it, but if you understand it, it'll give you a better sense of how to move that person maybe to the next level. If you understand, this person is still, like, still loving the story that their teacher told them.
Yeah,
How do I help them to like lift up that first corner to look underneath the story, right?
right.
So-
Just keep working with them at the place that they're at.
Yes, and maybe, what if the answer is to dig deeper into the story?
Right, exactly.
So are we prepared to completely discount discovery? We do that, by the way, these days we use the word colonialism. Are we ready to completely discount that? Or is there something there to harvest? Is there something there that's fundamental to who we are, and maybe even fundamental to who humans are? That we're curious. And we have hopes and dreams and, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, and do we actually believe in the power of transformation and the power of love from God? Because if we dig into the biblical story, and we do it in a way that honors the child of God and the other person, do we believe there's gonna be transformation?
Right.
Like, do we believe it or do we not? Like, are we trying to be God?
We are.
I mean, I believe it, so
Go
like,
ahead.
I don't even think it matters if you believe it or not. I think the call is to be loving and kind,
that's what I'm gonna say. Like,
period. And it doesn't matter if we think they'll transform or not. And I think if somebody is stuck developmentally, we're still just simply called to love them and to listen to them. And perhaps that will open up the discovery, or, that means you can still work alongside them. And you never know when the practice that
No,
there because they're loved and you're not trying to manipulate them. You have to figure out how to, that's our goal, our whole goal in life, in my opinion, is to figure out how to be loving and kind, period. Just period.
yeah, and Jamie, I'll get that right. And Jamie, like, I like that you said, and perhaps something will happen. Yeah, actually, what I think is it might be actually under those conditions are the only time that it will,
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right?
And they have to be loved. I mean, you've all had experiences, well, many of you, like me, with friends and relatives. And you have to love them, even though you're like, oh. But then I think, even the oh has to be oh, it can't be oh. It can't. I mean, that's the work of loving kindness. I'm gonna be like, wow. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole.
Oh, yeah, also, and I'll come right there, Brad, but on this transformation business. Right, do we believe that God can do there will be some transformation, but here's the thing, do we also believe that we might be the one transforming?
Yeah, right.
the power of transformation for all.
I'm understanding when you started with that, all this is about trying to be right. We hope they move along to their moral development to be right like us, which has nothing to do with moving people along the path of healthcare for all. Or, what is it? Because it feels like we're all saying, yeah, okay, they'll come along and they'll develop and then they'll be
They might.
higher, they might not. But it's kind of beside the point that I think you were making. Is that right?
It might be, but can you say one more time?
Well, we're trying to get them to realize that such origin story is wrong, or they're stuck at this moral development, which to me is another way of arguing with them to move them to this moral development. But how does that relate to all of us working for healthcare for all? I thought we were taking everybody wherever we are.
Yes,
And let's make a movement. We're not trying to decide if your moral development's here, there, or everywhere. We're just trying to do this.
yes,
but
It more helps us relate to people and use the right language.
Yes, well, we have to actually imagine, who is like this? Actually imagine, who is this Brad guy? Like, really, who is he? No, what do I think I know about the way he thinks? What do I think I know about, and I might be wrong, I'm gonna have to check on it. What do I think I know about the way you think, about where your values come from? About what would motivate you? I might have a whole bunch of, I should have, I think, a whole bunch of opinions about that. But I'm also gonna have to check them out, because I could be wrong. Yeah,
But is the point of that to draw me into the movement of healthcare, or is it to draw me forward on my moral development?
no, it's to draw you forward. I mean, if you want me to help with your moral development, I'll say yes.
But
But
that, I mean, that's the point. I hear a lot of stuff expecting people's moral development to change when organizing wise, why do you care if they're gonna?
Okay.
right,
so I'm a person and you're trying to move me along on the healthcare thing. And I tell you that I'm a Christian, but I also tell you that I think everybody should be responsible for their own healthcare. And if they get sick and die in the street, that's fine. How are you gonna move me in terms of a better healthcare system, having that opinion? One of the only levers that you might have in that is to leverage an origin story that you share with me.
right,
Right? And if I have, if I have a really childlike understanding of that origin story, then lifting it up and helping me to like challenge that origin story and then have a different understanding of that origin story. That's how you begin to leverage the power that's within me and within that story to move me in the direction that you want me to go with regard to health.
but you might be saying the same thing. Hey, do you think you're saying the same thing?
I don't.
I don't disagree with what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah, we just. You're gonna do a form. It's like, do you want your spouse in the form? Or I don't know. Okay. So what I want to talk a little bit about is self-interest. And I just want to pause here for a minute because, sometimes people get a little bit hung up on this term. So we'll do a 5-minute training on self-interest instead of normal 2-hour. Right, oops. Yes, that's just that. That's it. So a little bit of just a little 5-minute training in organizing. We use the term self-interest, and I can't really like gloss over it because this series is really about organizing to do things as Christians. So I want to just pause on the self-interest. This, some of you may have seen before, but sometimes we talk about people who are selfish. And sometimes we talk about people who are selfless. We're just on a little journey right now off the main topic to just get clear on this word self-interest. Sometimes we talk about people who are selfish, and sometimes we talk about people who are selfless. I think I grew up learning that this was good. And this was bad. Is that true for all of you? So the reason that organizers started using the word self-interest is because there's a problem actually with both of these things. Right? One of them is, if I'm selfish, you don't exist. So pretty clear why why we came down on that side. But the problem with selfless is that I don't exist. Right? So we're in a conversation, we're in a relationship together, and you know people like this who talk to you, and it's sort of evident that in their mind they don't exist. So self-interest is just a word that
Can't get in until the first, I don't get paid.
organizers have been using forever to say that there's something here in the middle a Venn diagram, except I didn't draw that,
No, I'll get,
you know, if I would have.
you're gonna have.
So, something in the middle where we find, you know, where are there things that you care about and where are the things that I care about?
If you just add shared self-interest, then you just have those two stick figures holding.
Maybe, and what's it, and we might find that our shared self-interest is, for example, let me just, and you may know him and you can tell him I was very respectful when throwing money at us. Senator Marty and I have deep, broad areas of shared self-interest. Deep, broad areas. On one subject, actually, even on the subject underneath that subject, which is everyone should have healthcare affordable, actually, we even agree on that.
Yeah.
There's just a disagreement. There's just a disagreement on on the steps that we get there. And to make matters worse, I'm nervous that he might be right. I mean, I'm not even feeling all that confident, except I think he's wrong. But the nice thing about working with a guy like Senator Marty, you can admit all of that. You can speak and sit with him and say, I really think you're wrong, Senator. But I'm, to be honest, nervous you might be right. Yeah. Okay, so that's what we mean by self-interest. So I'll tell you something. So, thank you. So what makes you you? And we're gonna just talk to each other for a minute. What makes you you? And since we only have a couple minutes, let's keep it to a couple simple things, like what is the core thing that you believe about yourself? Go ahead and start thinking about that. And then also, what is the core thing you think, you believe about the world? So let me give you some options, but you don't have to take my options. Somebody's option on what is the core thing, you might say that, is corrupt. That's the core thing I believe about the world, it's corrupt. And we're doing our best to get through it. That's not an uncommon one. You might think about the world. It's actually fundamentally good. There's just a few bad people who make it bad. That might be a cool thing. So let's take in pairs, 5 minutes and see what you can say about this. What is the core thing that you think about yourself? Who are you? What's the core thing you feel about yourself? Who are you? And if you can get there, what's the core thing you think about the world? Those two things might end up being related. Just turn this on.
I know I'm lost. Like, and I kind of love this song.
Therefore, the world. It's so changed, but it's changed. We are.
I mean, very much, and I think that
As a Calvin. We are not. On the other side. Will not stop. Never felt the hardest. Here I am.
I have. Like, is that what you like? So maybe, but maybe like, what's behind that you don't even think about? I would. Yeah.
Bad.
And I think somehow.
But if you. Never really thought of that.
Another minute.
Okay, so then sometimes it's over. Try to ladder. How does that happen? Well, that's kind of true about like, and I don't really know what that, that's like, that's we're all wrong with my parents. See, that's the thing about how. Something can happen, it's just kind of for everybody. I can't. It was like one of the airline type of people we called.
I recognize.
They like how rain. I hear it.
Okay, let's, I'm back together. Here's I have a question. Did anybody feel like they either said something or heard something that was really clear? It felt like, oh, that's essential. It feels so essential. Either that you said or you heard someone say, anybody say something like that? Yeah, go ahead. Let's go. I remember.
He can explain it better than I.
Okay.
It was about me, but I'm still trying to get my mind around it. I mean, I've spent more time focusing on my roles than rather than who I am.
Oh.
And so trying to tease that out and actually seeing the importance of doing that is something that's just happened over the last few years.
And what kinds of conclusions have you drawn?
Strong sense of duty.
Okay.
Doing things for others. But for most of my life, I'm so focused on trying to get done what needs to be done that
Yeah. My guess is a lot of people in the room can resonate with what you're saying. My guess is that almost all the men can resonate with what you're saying. Yeah. So if we were to talk to Harmon, like another step, we probably could uncover, these meta origin stories that are woven in there. Someplace, it would be my guess. Maybe stories of covenant, of constitutional, there's a right and a wrong. But maybe, I don't know. So we could uncover that. So let's say we're gonna talk to Harmon about coming down and helping with a public option on healthcare plan. There are ways of talking to Harmon that are probably gonna resonate pretty easily. And right? And I think probably all of us who know you would have already known this, that you're gonna be pretty resonant with an idea of duty. Yeah, resonant with that. But that would be an effective way to talk to you, not as who I think you should be, not as how I think you should think, but as who you are. I'm not saying that's who you're gonna be in 10 years, but as who you are. It probably would be more effective, unless you were just utterly in disagreement with the issue, would probably be more effective than talking to you about why you're wrong about health. Right. Yeah. Thanks, that was really great. Thanks.
Well, and to add on just quickly, he also said that as he started to explore his roles and seeing himself in new ways, that's where he's having the growth. So we have to imagine that when we're inviting people into the work in this way, we are also inviting them into growing and changing, and that's the beautiful thing, that is their self-interest. So it's not manipulative,
It happens.
it happens.
Yeah.
It is akin to motivational interviewing.
Maybe I don't know what that is.
Somebody, you said, just what you do. You know the whole theoretical model behind it, right?
No,
No,
it's something you learned in nursing training, right? Or something.
well, in the medical field. So some of you therapists probably know about it.
Give us your version, Jamie.
And so it's how you help change someone's behavior. So when I first learned about it, it was with regard to smoking cessation. So it's a lot of asking questions and figuring out what are the hurdles for that person? And they'll say, I don't want to quit. Oh, okay, so tell me about that. Rather than, okay, they don't want to quit. It's like, okay, well, tell me about that. And you slowly unravel what might be a motivating thing for them.
Yeah, I think that's right. I kind of think that's right, but you clearly have an agenda, at least in the moment, that they don't have. I don't want to quit.
Oh, you have an agenda, you care about their health and you know and you, just like you have an agenda about,
Yeah,
Getting them to the
Healthcare.
capital, then.
like,
Getting them to quit smoking.
it's
Yeah.
also though, I wanted to say, now I'm having this little, it's also about loving kindness. Because I care about their health and I can even, I watched this woman, they took 5 people off of the bridge at the U, and this woman, this therapist was amazing. And one of the young men was like, absolutely, why would I want to quit? I love it. And she did this publicly with all of them, and by the end, he was like, man, I'm gonna figure out how to quit doing this.
Yeah.
It was just so powerful, but he was being listened to.
right.
So whatever, his story of origin, whatever.
Right.
It's very interesting to hear Harmon talk about roles and, my core is that I'm a child of God created to do things that would please God, really to follow Jesus. And, but my role before is to take leadership here and to go out and coalesce people to do that and to do all kinds of different things. And my role is very, very different. And it's evolving at Nakoma Square because my ministry now really is listening.
And there's a difference, isn't there, there can be a difference often between our role and the question I asked, which is who are you?
And who I am someone to just be there for someone I don't have the agenda that I used to have.
Yeah.
The agenda.
Yeah.
At my best, I don't want to say that.
Yeah.
Which doesn't always happen, but just, I mean, just stopping and listening, I'm on a mission someplace. And someone just wants to talk about what, if you ask the question, how are you? I need to be prepared to be able to listen to how you are.
Yeah, so one of the reasons that we're talking about this is because I keep reminding myself so that you know that this series is on organizing. And it's on organizing and how do we get at these places which feel real to people? That or feel like someone's telling the truth. If I'm suggesting, and we'll come back to this next week, but I'm suggesting that these 8 origin stories, biblical and national, when they're touched on, it feels right. It feels right to people. But so often we have a small view of who someone is, a small view of what motivates them. So 15 years ago or so, it might even be more than that. A guy named Thomas Frank wrote this book, What's the Matter with Kansas? Did we read that book? So the basic point of the book is, why do these people in Kansas, it was actually addressing what tends to be Democratic complaints about Republican states. That's in essence. So Kansas is not a wealthy state. The people of Kansas are not wealthy people. Because I'm at Our Saviors, I can just talk straight out. And the analysis is that the economic program of the Republicans are not good for not wealthy people. It's not good for poor people. And so Thomas Frank was answering the question, how dumb are these people in Kansas or other places that they continually vote against their own economic self-interest? Don't they understand? And the point of the book is, they do understand. You've just misunderstood that that's the thing that they care about the most. They don't care about, they do care about their economic self-interest, but they care more about some other things. Like national origin stories, maybe even biblical origin stories, ring true in them. So, women's rights, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, or abortion. Abortion has been the driving wedge. And so, not to get into the whole abortion conversation, but it is possible that these people who have shaped things recently, I would have to remind myself prior to starting and I didn't just take everybody out.
No, you did.
Yeah. Right. that the right in this country has maybe has done a better job of appealing to these origin stories on that issue than the left has. Yeah,
Well, I'm wondering if they take to the origin story, but the advocacy of the.
yeah,
Before and Brownie board.
right.
Go there, say.
Right, but that's what we'll do is we'll argue the particulars of a thing. It's a very academic conversation instead of appealing to what someone actually. Okay, so next week, we're gonna take some actual issues, that are facing us, that we wanna move people on, or we'd like to organize around. And play it out, given, these meta stories, meta origin stories and self-interest, and play it out and see what would that look like. To talk to people about the issues we pick next week.
Senior.